is Alexander, and I am in charge of TV and film content at this project called Transformation Communications Activity, which is a project by United States Agency for International Development in Ukraine, and we fund. Actually, we give out grants to Ukrainian content producers, so they produce socially relevant content, and we also offer them these meetings with international professionals so they can learn something important and useful for them. I just wanted to double check with you how to correctly pronounce your names and what your positions at NRK are.
Yeah, I can start. My name is Fredrick Luihn, and I'm head of acquisitions.
Okay.
And yeah, my name is Hans-Jørgen, and I am head of international financing of drama at NRK.
All right, so we will let our guests in right now. I will make a short introduction, and then I will pass it on to Adam and Josh, and we will have this wonderful.
Fredrick and Hans-Jørgen, look at the bottom. There is a translator, a simultaneous translation. We're all going to be speaking in English, but for question and answer time, you'll see the globe at the bottom of the Zoom. You click on that and click on English. You'll have the person whispering in your ear.
Yes,
thanks, please. And thanks very much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, hopefully there will be no air raids in the middle of our meeting, and there will be no. All right, let's let everyone in. Добрий день всім нашим учасникам сьогоднішньої зустрічі.
Good afternoon. I'm Kyiv. To all the participants that have joined us, and I hope that you were also guests of our previous meetings. Where this month we dedicated them to promoting Ukrainian content for the benefit of the international markets. This is PitchUA educational platform. This is continuation for the grant called PitchUA. This is supported by Project Transformation Communications Activity, and this is funded by USAID. And also, our meetings are conducted with the support of the Ministry of Culture, Information Policy of Ukraine. I'm Alexander Kleimenov. I'm responsible for TV and film content for ECA. And this is the third meeting dedicated to promoting or entry for the Ukrainian content. For the benefit of the international, we have NRK, Hans-Jørgen Osnes, who is head of Department for Funding of Drama, and Fredrick Luihn, who is head of Procurement. And today we will have our excellent moderators, our Hollywood experts, Adam Siegel and Josh Weinstock. You know them well, and they know Ukraine well, and all the peculiarities of the Ukrainian market. So I hope that this meeting is going to be useful and exciting for everyone. And you can use the chat box if you're following us in Zoom and on YouTube. You can put the questions for our guests.
All right. Hi, Josh.
Good morning.
Good morning for us in Hollywood. Today, everyone, we're finishing up our discussion around international production. If you can go back, and see our videos. If you haven't seen the earlier ones, the first one was really just a primer for those who don't really have the language or haven't had a lot of experience with international production. Our second talk was with Ukrainian producers who have put together international productions. And I thought that conversation went really well. It really went into a lot of the key details a lot of the issues that come up. And in fact, one of the projects there that we talked about, those who stayed, which is about, obviously the people who had remained within the country at the beginning of the war, is actually one of the projects that our guests today are supporting. So why don't we just bring them out? Hans-Jørgen and Fredrick, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to join and to talk about this.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It's really good to be here and to talk to you and see how we can share our knowledge. I was with Katarina on Those Who Stayed. Actually, yesterday we talked about her project, which we're really happy that we have. And so that's the co-production. And then, of course, also Fredrick has done a pre-buy on another series from Ukraine. But we're really glad that we can be part of those projects.
Well, it's great. I mean, one of the things that we've been talking about, and it matches my experience with working right now in the international market, it is regional broadcasters like NRK that are the really critical partners in these projects. It's a difficult situation, obviously, because of the war. Making TV shows is hard enough. Making shows during a war is just incredible. But as is the Ukrainian way, it will be done. They will get it done. So we're really happy to have you. What we're going to do today, I think, is we'll start the conversation talking about co-productions. So we'll talk more to you, Hans-Jørgen, and then we'll switch to talking about acquisitions, and then we'll sort of do both just to start with. So just to kick you off, I mean, basically, we've just heard the whole co-production process from the producers. Can you tell us what is the production process from your perspective, from the perspective of the regional broadcaster, from a partner like NRK?
Well, first, of course, we're present in the international market on all the screenings, and we try and meet with producers who have projects that can be of interest to our audience. Of course, our focus is on the Norwegian audience and showing them series that matter to them, to our audience, that they need to resonate or need to have a story that impacts or that is important to our public, and that's where it starts. So we hear pitches and we read, and there I'm joined by, there's an executive producer called Elizabeth Tangen who reads all the projects. And she and I discuss them in a lot of the meetings. It's the two of us. Sometimes it's just one. And then we try and see, okay, what projects would be right. And then some of the projects feel like co-productions and some of them feel like something maybe for acquisitions. So some of the projects then also move over to Fredrick's department if it feels that that's the way to go. But we are a small country. With 5.5 million, we have, of course, because we're small, we don't have a lot of resources, but we try and collaborate. So we collaborate a lot with the Nordics and try and find a way to work together. Because then we become bigger and we can draw on each other a bit. But we are we're fairly small, and we don't do a lot of co-production. But we do some series, and we try and get variety. Of course, it's always having a bouquet of shows that complement the series we produce ourselves, and also what comes in on the acquisition side. But on the co-production side, they need to resonate in some way to us. And then when we find a project that we like, that we feel is the right one to go into, we try and see how can we explore that. And there doesn't need to be like Norwegian in the show or happening in Norway. It can be just that it is an important story, and for the case of those who stayed, that was a project we really felt was really strong. Katarina had known our head of drama from a year back, so there was a knowledge of each other, and so they knew each other. And then also she knew Anna at SVT, the head of drama at SVT, and the head of drama at YLE, Jarmo. So we knew of the project, but our head of drama, we had a new head of drama, so there was, of course, talks between the heads of drama. We have this project, you should look into it as well. And then we tried to lift it collectively. So we tried to come in, all of us, and tried to make the other partners, because we have a strong collaboration with the Nordics, with the other public service broadcasters. So we try and draw on that and help lift the project in the other broadcasters that are not aware of it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
And just to be clear, when you said you were talking about Sweden, I think, and was there another Nordic country involved directly?
Yeah,
Denmark.
No, it was Finland. So Finland, YLE in Finland, knew Katarina, had met, so they had been talking, and then Anna Kronman at SVT had also heard of the project, and they had been talking, and then we were talking. So in that case, we were all talking about the project, and also between us at the same time, and we came on board just a little after the other two, and that of course has to do with that we need approval. So every project has to be lifted up, and our approval process was a bit slower than the others, or our meeting was scheduled a bit later. But our aim was all the time to be able to go out and have it ready for Gothenburg when Katarina there was on stage at Drama Vision in Gothenburg, where she was talking about Ukrainian productions, and that we tried to use that so that it could help start the ball rolling, like the snowball rolling, where if the first public service broadcasters come on board, then that will automatically trigger some things, and we know each other, so of course we try and talk about the projects. We do that all the time. We talk about the projects we're interested in, that we're looking into, and try and see how we can find a way. And of course we would love to help everyone, but we need to try and find the ones, and it is a lot about timing as well. It's always difficult. Some projects are really good, and we can't do them because they're timing wise, it's not possible. But we try and find the best way to do so. And
also just so real quick, I was going to follow up it's at these different festivals, different markets that are happening all throughout the year. That's where you're going to go and see each other, right? So it's stuff at Content London or at MIP or that sort of thing, right? Or
yeah, we don't do all the markets, but we do quite a few, and some are more important. And we try. It's all about relations. It's a people business. You get to know people, and you share projects, and slowly and it is building trust and finding the right projects. I came from the producer's side, so I joined NRK in my position now only a year and a half ago, and or a bit over a year and a half ago. But of course, when I was a producer on the other side, it was like if you do a co-production, it is giving away your credit card to someone else. So you need to you need to know them, you need to trust them, and these relationships are built over time, and getting to know them, that's the best way of doing it. And some projects, sometimes you meet people over years and you don't manage to get something to fit together or make it work because of various reasons, and then suddenly something clicks or it does fit. So it is a lot of patience as well, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, so you had mentioned, you guys can't obviously cover all the festivals and markets out there, but like, in your opinion, what are sort of the key European markets, festivals that you guys, take seriously?
For me, on the financing side, it's Gothenburg has become an important one for the Nordics, which is a very small festival. It's a 2-day thing, but in a theater, and it's very limited. But that is, of course, that's where we kind of a lot meet our Nordic contacts as well. Then internationally, but it is becoming more and more a place where the distributors go, and some of the channels go when they look for Nordic content. But I would say for me, Cirrus Mania, which was this week in Lille, is one of the most important ones, and then MIPCOM in the fall is an important one, and then C21 or Content London end of November, beginning of December are the most important ones. And then it varies. Sometimes Mia in Rome. Sometimes it does vary a bit. But the biggest two are probably Cirrus Mania and the biggest three: Cirrus Mania, MIPCOM, and Content London.
Great. And I wanted to ask you, because you kind of touched upon it generally, but I just, for our audience to have sort of a better understanding from your perspective of things like when you guys are doing co-productions, because, when you have multiple partners, as you said, like everyone has to sort of approve on their end. Can you sort of explain the process, how exactly that works with your partners, so that, you're making sure that, you're approving your end while also keeping, your partners obviously happy as well?
Yeah, we try and find a good model, and of course what we can come in with is based on market prices, and we in the Nordics we're a population of 27.5 million. The Sweden, Denmark, and Finland are between 5 and 6 million, and then Denmark, Finland, and Norway are 5 to 6 million, and
Sweden's bigger,
10 plus. Yeah, and then Iceland is minute. So of course we try and find a model where there are some market prices that kind of lay there, and we try and it needs to be consistent with that. And then what I think is the important factor, and what I always look at, is what is the financing plan? What does it look like? What is the timeline of it? What funds are you trying to access? When are the deadlines for these? And then of course we need to try and make I try and push so we make our decisions so that they can help the producers access some of this other funding, and that goes parallel. That is kind of on the financing side, and that has to go parallel with reading, and if there are comments, because of course Elizabeth will be reading the project and giving feedback in some cases, and these are things that can be taken into account, that can be helped. helpful in the process of producing the series to get an eye on it from the outside, or an eye on it from a more international or a Nordic vision or a view, to be honest.
And to that point, so like, I mean, we've been talking a little bit about cultural tests, and you mentioned yourself, like, you don't have to have a Norwegian actor per se. What are the cultural tests that you take into consideration? And I mean, and maybe it's spread throughout Nordic countries. How does that work in terms of the cultural tests and the points in terms of funding?
Well, of course, the aspects that I've been talking about now are kind of where we come in with our financing as a broadcaster. Then, of course, the producers can attach a local producer who can access funding.
That's right. Yeah.
And that is soft money that they can access, soft money or regional money. There are different criteria. There is more spend requirement or involvement on that you need certain personnel, crew members, etc. But and that is, it has been a point system. Now it's not that rigid, but that is, of course, another part of the industry. So when we go into a show, a TV series, we don't need that, because we're thinking about our audience and our investment. And then, but of course, you can add that on, and you can bring in a local producer who can maybe help you with tax shelter or soft money, so tax incentives, etc. And then there is maths in it. Then it's more, okay, what can I do in that territory? And that is a different way. But for us as public service broadcasters, we just try to find the stories that resonate with us, and we don't want projects to have an increased CO2 footprint just to be able to fit some kind of requirement. So we don't. Right. We don't want. We want to keep them as local as they can be. So of course, because it would increase your budget if you have to come to Norway to do post-production, and you have to have a co-producer on board who has a fee for his work, and for they would take a percentage for the paperwork they do. So it does increase the budgets, and it also increases the traveling and the CO2 footprint. So those are elements that are kind of there are no requirements to do so, but if there is a show, then our National Film Institute would say, okay, these are the producers who do this kind of series or this kind of film, and then there's possibilities of accessing money, but you never have a guarantee for that.
Yeah, and I think always, you keep in mind, which is what we always talk about, but you don't try to Frankenstein yourself. Don't try to keep putting things on just to get sort of access to money, because it never really works. If it naturally fits, if there's kind of a natural place, certain characters or something in the project that naturally suit, you to, bring this person in, I was thinking Lilyhammer, which is, that perfect example of an American and Norwegian sort of connection. Like you've got certain projects that will naturally have that, but not everyone does. So you don't try to force that. It is, if there is something inherent in the project, then it makes sense. But otherwise, it's nice to be able just to sort of stick to the local story and make sure you're keeping that part true and authentic.
I just want to tell you a quick story on Lilyhammer, because Lilyhammer is actually an NRK show. Originally, it wasn't.
I think so, right?
And then the producers, they found this small company in the US who wanted to attach to the show, and they came to us and said, this was before my time, but they came to us and they said, we would like this American partner on board, and then they came onto the project. But it was originally an NRK. It was an NRK original, and then it became a Netflix original outside of Norway.
And was Van Zandt always attached to it, or was that added?
No, he was attached from when it was a Norwegian show, and then he pushed the button with these Netflix people.
There you go. Okay, so that's how, and then obviously the budget increased and yada yada yada. Oh, how funny. Okay.
That was a Norwegian show with an American actor in it, or an American artist in it.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Great
But yeah, so it's a
cool.
small diversion there.
Thanks for that. Thanks.
Fredrick, we're gonna turn to you real quick now, and talk a little bit about acquisitions. And as Adam mentioned earlier in the week, we talked about from a seller standpoint and some of the success stories that have come out of Ukraine in terms of, you know, selling and licensing their products to other broadcasters. Can you explain from your side, like how the process typically works in general, and then like at what point do you get involved? Like, is it pre-production, you know, production, post, or after the distribution or first theatrical release of the content?
Well, the easy answer is yes to all of those questions. It has been sort of like a journey. It started with the buyers getting to watch and pilot the first episode of a series, have a lot of good time to decide whether or not to buy it or not, and then buy it solely for the Norwegian territory. But the global players arrived in Norway quite early, and that meant that we had to get the rights, to offer the audience the same kind of flexibility and convenience that Netflix can give their viewers. And to get hold of those online rights, we needed to do two things. Three things. The first thing was to gang up with our Nordic compounders and try to place bids for the whole Nordic region at the same time. The second one was to enter in and a bit earlier into the process to do decisions quite quickly, to decide based on the script on the first episode, for example, or sometimes just the treatment and the cast. And the third thing, which is of course always the thing that the distributor wants the most, and that was more money. So those three things had to be changed basically. The easy answer is that half of the fiction titles we acquire after screening them. The other half we acquire on a script basis, or even earlier. But there is a distinct line between acquisition and co-producing. So co-producing would be what Hans-Jørgen and the drama department involves themselves with. Outside of the Nordic cooperation, we also have been working within the EBU to try to get all the public broadcasters to act together. Unfortunately, the need to adapt because of the Netflixes and the Amazons of the world,
right?
It's not as urgent in certain part of Europe as it has been in the Nordics, but we see that a lot of channels are now coming around to see that it is an issue. And it was established a couple of years ago, a EBU pre-buy initiative, very fancy name, but basically it is an invitation to public broadcasters in Europe to bring producers that they have commissioned a drama series from, and for the producers to pitch their projects to a group of buyers and from the public broadcasters. And in that way, we were pitched the project In Her Car from Starlight Media that was commissioned by STP TV. And together with the other Nordic buyers, we pre-bought that series. And I think it's a good complementary title to the one that Hans-Jørgen and the drama department went into. So it's two series that shows the situation for Ukrainians at the moment. So we feel that it's a very relevant title and a very good way for us to show the audience, the Norwegian audience, how the situation is for the Ukrainian people.
Fredrick, I have a question. So, and I actually have two questions. I just want to follow up a little bit on that one, just to be clear. What you described as a pre-buy means that you're essentially acquiring a project, but it's before it has actually been either finished. Is it not completed yet?
Yeah, it's sometimes we will have we'll get the title delivered a year after we've done the decision to buy the series, and we do that with a lot of different kind of producers. So, for example, we pre-bought a British crime series called Magpie Murders, based on a book by Anthony Horowitz. We pre-bought that from Sony. We pre-buy projects from ITV. We can from BBC. We bought something called Chelsea Detective, just based on script from BBC. And this applies to all the major distribution companies. So Fremantle, Banny J, and all the studios as well. So we try to be relevant and be up in their faces when they have interesting projects.
Right, and they're of course talking to Netflix as well, so you want to get in there. How do you find out about them? I mean, is it the same sort of process, going to the markets and that sort of thing? Obviously, what Hans-Jørgen was talking about, is it about relationships? It's a combination. Just generally explain that experience about where you find the series, what are your points of contact, and identifying, possible acquisitions.
Well, it is a network business for sure. So it's through the grapevine. It's an important factor. We also keep half an eye on the trade magazines and the press releases, and very often it's the press release has the distributor attached in the press release, so we're on the phone right away. And then we go to markets as well. MIPCOM, I think, is very important. The London screenings that was now in February is very important for us. We attend the LA screenings, and MIP has become less important. And to try to also think about the carbon footprint, we, as a group, the Nordic buyers, we try to help each other. So, for example, during Series Mania, there was none of the buyers from NRK present, but the buyer from DR, from Denmark's Radio, was there. And just before this meeting, I had a meeting with all the buyers from the Nordics, and she was then presenting the projects she had found at Series Mania. So we do this kind of weekly meetings between the public broadcasters in the Nordic, and we share info with that we've gotten, and we identify projects that we think we can buy together. And then we it's sort of on it's not one dedicated that do the negotiations every time, but it alters from time to time. So I did recently a negotiation on behalf of everybody with ITV, while the buyer from DR did a deal with Sony, for example. So it is a very much flexible way of working.
It's collaborative. It sounds like you definitely have to have trust among people from the other broadcasters.
Yeah, that for sure.
And so when you're considering projects and when you're looking at things, like what are the different factors that you are sort of taking into account when you're contemplating about whether or not this makes sense for you guys?
Well, we know the kind of shows that works for our audience. The easiest projects to pick, it's if there is a cozy little murder in the British countryside and an old lady trying to solve it, being helped by a young helpless man, that is a very easy project to say yes to. And it caters for the somewhat older audience we have. But to be able to get the younger audience, we need to look for more high concept titles. And so the ones that we do pre-buy on is mostly those that we see that will disappear the earliest to the global streamers. But we see that there's certain genres work better for our audience, and we're doing experiments to see if we can establish something they didn't know they wanted. So we had, for example, the last year we acquired a Spanish soap, Dos Vidas, 255 hour-long episodes that we gave our audience, and that was the first for us. So we tried that. We bought a Mexican pay TV series about Hernan Cortés, which was also sort of like not something where the audience are used to getting from NRK, and we're trying to spread and find projects from other, using other languages than English. So German language and French language is of course very natural that we look at, and we're also looking at projects now, from the Flemish and Benelux countries, and now from Ukraine.
Right. Now, I want to just real quick, Adam, before you jump in on your next question, just because you brought it up, and this is actually a question that both of you guys can sort of like weigh in on, because one of the things that Adam and I are constantly reiterating over and over again is genre, right? And really making sure that you know what genre you're telling and what identity of the story you're telling. Can you guys sort of talk about like what typically are the genres that appeal to you guys and that you feel work best?
Well, outside of the crime genre, I think costume drama has worked well historically for us, like Downton Abbey and those kind of shows. Comedy tend to be difficult. It doesn't travel
right
easily. But I think now we're also at a certain point in time where the toolbox that the producers and the creative minds will have to create good content is very exciting. But based on the last week's launches on artificial intelligence, what kind of toolbox that will give to the creatives, and I think that's going to open up for a lot of different kind of genres that perhaps was limited only to the US studios and like Disney and Warner and the likes.
And Hans-Jørgen, what do you say on the genre question?
Well, I mostly work in drama. We are always looking for drama. I think we're looking for we're not that big on Nordic noir as some of the other Nordics are. we are not focusing on or have not been focusing on that much. So we are of course looking for that abroad as well, because we don't produce it that much ourselves. But I also wanted to comment on one thing, because we have a digital platform, so we are not linear. We don't think linear anymore. And we've been digital since 2013. And when Netflix then did this Lillehammer with us, we understood what was going to happen. So we went full time from 2015. And that, of course, results in that what the numbers that Fredrick and how things are working, we can also see then automatically how it works, because we are actually our FVOD is first, so we schedule for our digital platform, NRK TV, and then they are linear as well. But we then get numbers, so we easily see, so that we can read the statistics on shows.
And what about? So let's say you've either co-produced or acquired a show. How do you talk about potentially additional seasons, and how are you involved in that conversation, and how does that process go? Because obviously your interest and your involvement is part of the reason why there'd be a second season. So how does that work?
I think that we on our end, we've done, when we produce things, we've done up to 3 seasons. That's kind of been a priority. When we're talking to the international partners now, we're talking about potentially being part in a second and maybe a third season. But it's not that it's happened that much. But then, of course, we have the co-productions that are within the Nordics, and there we are entering second seasons and sometimes third seasons, because there is a collaboration that's ongoing. Because we have this, between the Nordics, we share 12, there are 12 projects every year. So we have 3 co-productions with the other Nordic countries, and that's an ongoing thing. But for things from abroad, there hasn't been that much. It's been like first season, but I think we're maybe moving into seeing if something really works, that we will, when we are discussing that it can be a second season and maybe a third. And of course, what happens is, or our experience is, that a second and a third season are a lot more difficult to finance.
Why is that?
Because there are less funds available.
Okay.
So of course, when we produce something, we produce a lot of our series with independent producers from the work here in Norway, and then they would then have access to some soft money, and it's more difficult to get soft money, or some money is more difficult to get on a second or a third season, because then you say it's a hit. So then it will become more expensive to produce, or more difficult to finance. And then, of course, when you're financing the second season, you need to have the potential partners in on the first season, because otherwise it isn't a standalone. In most cases, it isn't standalone. So you would need to do a sale or have a partner attached on the first season, and then build on that.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously, like, this goes to acquisitions as well, which is, I think Fredrick was the one who said, like, you're kind of looking for projects you think that are going to be hot, like they're going to be really popular. So it's obviously, you're looking at the interest of other regions, right? So if you have a show that had a really successful first season, maybe that's also, they're going to have to start selling other territories in order to get that funding, and hopefully you'll be able to still participate in it. But it's part of the whole, like, once it becomes a thing, that's the draw, right? Like, that's the reason you kind of either jump in or try to be a part of it.
Yeah, for us, it's a success criteria. If the series we acquire has more seasons, it means that it hits its audience locally. in the original territory, but also that it most likely will work well for us the upcoming seasons. But there is the problem that if all the series we have are successful and get new seasons, there is not so much room to acquire new ones. So it's a double-edged sword, basically.
Right. Well, yeah, that would be a nice problem to have, right? Too many successful shows, but obviously you want to keep new stuff coming in, and seeing what sticks.
And one other comment, of course, one of the challenges is when you go into a first season, you need, or for us, if we are to do a second season, we would want to do it quite quickly, because there shouldn't be too much of a space between first and second season.
Right.
Coming from the other side, of course, we would need to see how a season performs before we want to go into a new season. So you always have that, okay, what risk can you take? Because the broadcaster, very often sometimes they even go into production on a second season before having published the first season. And then if you want to come on board on a season 2 before the commissioning broadcaster has actually published it, it is a big risk.
Yeah.
So that is a constant challenge, and that also makes it more difficult to finance multiple seasons.
Yeah, no, it's a tricky thing because there are so many factors in moving it quickly. Obviously, I mean, each show, international show, has its own story, right? You have they're all different, right? They're all made differently, and there are already so many different factors involved. Well, listen, you have actually perfectly covered all of our questions even before we asked them. So I think we've covered everything that we wanted to beautifully. So we'd like to open this up to some questions if you're open to it for the rest of our time. Maybe Alex, did you? Are there some questions?
We already have a couple of questions from our viewers on YouTube. And the first question is, do you cooperate with the Ukrainian public broadcaster in any way in terms of maybe co-production or acquisitions?
I guess I can answer when it comes to acquisitions. There is no direct cooperation with the Ukrainian public broadcaster, other than they are also part of the EBU setup, and thus they are able to bring projects into the pre-buy initiative. So that's sort of like an indirect cooperation on that side.
And the EBU, and how long has the EBU been around?
50 years, I don't know. It's a good question. They have famously been the one organizing the European Song Contest. So you can add to that.
Hans-Jørgen, what were you going to say?
Yeah, there haven't been, to my knowledge, any co-productions direct with a Ukraine broadcaster, the only show I know of is the one we have. Those Who Stayed is the only Ukrainian co-production there has been, as of my knowledge, and I don't know why. It's I think it is. Well, we firstly we focus on the territories that are closest to us. So because it has to do also a lot with culture. So Benelux, Germany, and the Nordics have been kind of primary focus, and then France. But we're always trying to see if there is look at possibilities. Definitely.
And
I think we public service broadcasters need to strengthen each other. We need to try and find a way to collaborate. and we need to see our competition with the streamers is immense. So of course we need to try and find and consolidate and collaborate as much as possible, and then build on that. So of course I think it's the way forward, but it is also very difficult because of culture, because of different ways of working, and the bureaucracies in different, as we have been existing for some time. There is a certain degree of bureaucracy, and then also the needs are a bit different, and way of publishing is different. So all of those are elements that we talk a lot about when we talk about how to partner up with other broadcasters, how to make a fit.
Yeah.
If that answers your question a bit.
Yeah,
it does.
On an overall aspect.
And topic-wise, the question is: would you be interested in a series that deals with the Ukrainian history of the 19th century? Well, I don't know if you have any particular interest in a particular century, but just speaking generally, would you be interested in series that are based on the themes from the Ukrainian history?
Well, if it's always difficult to talk about a hypothetical project like that, but I can use examples of a series that we have acquired, which is sort of like historical, or based in a historical setting. For example, the German Babylon Berlin, the Tom Tykwer series. That has worked well with the audience and also among our critics. So I think it's about the storytelling, how well it's been done, and I think there's definitely a very high interest in the Norwegian audience about Ukraine, and I think that also goes for their history.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things we were hitting on in one of our earlier discussions. It's impossible to say any particular topic is going to work for any regional broadcaster. It's just, I know that's the question everyone has, but there's no kind of like golden ticket here. What it is, though, is it's looking at, quite frankly, the history of Ukraine, being really involved in the history of Europe over the last 1,000 years. And I was even pointing to lectures by Timothy Schneider, he's actually teaching one of the only courses on Ukraine in the US, talking about the fact that it's the Ukraine has been sort of deeply center to so many of the major events in Europe in the last 1,000 years. So it's sort of looking at that and really trying to figure out, okay, how does this history directly speak to the Nordic people? Like that's really the question, right? So when you're preparing your presentation, you need to be thinking, okay, this had these heroes or these families or these people that touched Norway or touched the Nordic countries in a significant way. So that's kind of, I think, how you start to look at those potential partners or potential conversations in the future. Does that set a ring right to you guys?
I'm not sure if it necessarily need to sort of have a Nordic connection in that way, okay. but it I think as long as the story is strong enough and being told in the, how do we say, the speed almost. Sometimes there is a different kind of tempo in the storytelling around in Europe, so it needs to hit the right rhythm there. But as I said, as examples, Babylon Berlin is a good way where there's a core story that is universal. There is the one we acquired from Mexico, Hernan. Is the storytelling there was quite decent. So it was it did not work that well for our audience, but it met our expectations in a number wise. So as long as the storytelling is good, I think doesn't matter that it's very local. And as you say, Ukraine is in very much in the center, and it's easy to find good stories that span to countries around.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
We have there a question from a viewer on Zoom. Katya, please turn your microphone on and go ahead. Katya, your microphone is muted. Could you please?
Hi, sorry.
There you are.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Katya. Yeah, I have a very specific question, but maybe you can answer for me. I am dealing now with unscripted shows. And for example, the show made by created by my production was the finalist at MIPCOM formats by Fox Entertainment. And they really liked it, but they usually don't go further with the formats they like. And everybody says that if you want to do, for example, a dance show or a studio show, you have got to run it on the local market, which is logical and which was very possible before for us, of course. And it's not possible now. Is there any way to go with our creative team, which is like basically Ukrainian, for example, to NRK or other local broadcaster with the idea of a studio unscripted show that you might be interested in doing? And what would be the way to do that?
That's a good question.
Very specific, I know.
It's difficult for me to say, to be honest, because it's outside of what I normally deal with. But the way into commissioning, getting programs commissioned at NRK is that is basically the same as, I guess, in any other territory, that you come and you pitch the story to our commissioning editors, and with a floor show, I think if the idea is good enough, then the producers, the commissioners are willing to take risks, that should work. But I cannot say that I have any example that it has been done in Norway with NRK, at least.
And with the unscripted in general, for example, documentaries, or like we have also a travel show with Ukrainian twist, something like Adam was saying they were trying to create with Borscht, getting it on the international level. Mm-hmm. We're kind of working on the format like that. It's cooking, travel, and with the Ukrainian refugee topic. Then that would be interesting, something like that. It's international. It has kind of Ukrainian taste, but it's not totally about Ukraine and about the war. Something like that would be interesting for the local broadcasters.
Then it would be something that would have to go through Extern, which is the external department. And I don't know, but I don't. It hasn't been done before, so
right.
Not for us from anywhere else either. So it's a bit difficult to answer. But there is one department that handles all the documentaries that are done by external producers, and also floor shows and a variation of things that are done.
What I might add to this conversation, because it just happened with Borscht. Borscht, A Secret Ingredient, was a show that I worked on directly, but it was produced through this program early on. And one of the strategies that I suggested, because it's really tricky, particularly with reality shows or these formatted shows, because of what they're talking about. So when we designed it so that it could be a series, but it could also be a film. Mm-hmm. And so when we made it, at one point, it actually was just segments as part of another show. So it was like 7-minute segments. Then we did like half-hour segments. And then we actually did a feature-length version of it. The feature-length version of Borscht is now just about to premiere on Netflix. And that was developed through the more traditional world of documentary features, right? So there are some worlds that are just much more familiar with this, like feature world and documentary features. So that's definitely something there. But sometimes when you go and you have to look for any of these types, like you did, you pitch the format, but the idea is to sort of keep having conversations as our guests were talking about. It's about developing those relationships. Keep following up with those folks. And if they know someone, have them introduce you to other people. So keep following that trail, because that's going to be how you're going to start to meet more people. And who knows, maybe you'll be the first to do this, because like everything that's happening in Ukraine, there's a lot of firsts, right? A lot of new things are happening. So it's definitely something to pursue, but definitely keep in mind other strategies that maybe fit more traditional forms of distribution.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Katya. So if people have anything to propose, like show proposals or documentary proposals that they would like to develop together with NRK, where should they go? Is there like a contact person, contact number, an email where they should address their proposals?
If it is a co-production for a feature for a TV series, I can pass that on. So I would pass it on to Elizabeth, who handles that. And then if it is for acquisitions, it would be through Fredrick. And then the external, like for documentaries like this one you're mentioning, it would be through Extend, but I'm not sure how that. But I'll look into that. I'll actually have a chat with the head of external to see if they do that. But I also want to mention one other thing, because there is also a fund in Norway for and it's mostly for films. It's called Sørfond, or SO, and it's on the NFI, the Norwegian Film Institute page, and it is it is a fund that can be applied for feature films and fiction and documentary films, and it's soft money. It requires a Norwegian producer who applies, but there are no requirements apart from that.
Oh. So
it could be interesting to look into. And they have a separate page, and it's sorfond.no. So I'll spell it again, sorfond.no.
And we'll follow up if you have anything to share, we'll follow up and we'll put it in the description section on the video in the future. So we'll have that information. But I think that's it, right? So it's being really resourceful. Be strategic, right? Where you can find other ways and start to meet other people. Because this is NRK and this is just Norway. You're seeing this all over Europe. So it's really about doing the research, finding out about these different grants, these different funding opportunities, and then starting using your contacts to try to find local producers. There's a lot of people who are, thanks, Hans-Jørgen. There's a lot of people who are very interested in Ukraine. They want to work with Ukrainians. So it is about sort of finding those contacts. And obviously what we'll be doing with the future with Pitch UA in the future is we're going to be doing a lot of these kinds of, and we're talking a lot about how to start to build those relationships between Ukrainian creatives and partners internationally. I do want to start to wrap it up. Alex, we have any final question? Because I know our guests have to.
I have one final question.
Okay.
How detailed should these proposals, the initial proposals, be that you expect from Ukrainian producers if they seek co-production opportunities? Like when you receive the initial proposal from them, what do you absolutely want to see there, and what would be redundant at the first stage?
Or even this acquisition thing as well, so it could apply for the pre-buy. Yeah.
It would be a Bible or a pitch deck, I would say. A pitch deck, a pilot episode, and a season outline. So a pitch deck with the synopsis, with visuals, a pilot episode, and then a step outline could be medium-sized synopsis for each episode.
And then what about a budget or a production plan, finance plan?
A budget, yes. Like that would be next up. Okay, what's the budget for the series? But of course, it can be put in budget and an alternative or a scenario for financing of the show. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I have to leave, unfortunately.
Yes. No, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. This was a really, really great conversation. And I hope everyone, people can watch it later too, but I hope everyone found it. And I want to thank our guests, Hans-Jørgen and Fredrick. Your insights were incredibly helpful. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having us. It was really, really good. Good to speak to you, and good luck. And we are thinking about you. So
thank you very much.
We're there with you. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Сказати нашим українським учасникам, по-перше,
and I would like to tell, for the sake of our Ukrainian participants, this has been a very interesting conversation. I hope that you have taken note of the advice provided by our Norwegian guests. On YouTube and in the chat box, you can see the address of the Norwegian fund that was discussed earlier in the chat box, the same in Zoom. And now I will turn the floor to Adam and Josh for their final remarks.
Add any closing comments to this very interesting conversation.
Well, I would just say, look, I mean, we weren't trying to repeat everything, but actually everything has been repeated. So our primer got you set up, and the 2 days of conversations, I think, really actually just explained and reiterated the points we were making. And it's not, I mean, as they say, it's not rocket science. All of the people that we're talking to have been doing this for a while, so they know it. And there is an existing world that exists that's been doing this for a long time in the international production space. So what this is about you beginning to research, learning more, and networking, finding these opportunities. Obviously, it's hard. It's hard. Obviously, a lot of people can't travel out of the country. It's expensive. There are other things, but there are these programs that are now popping up. So it is about doing the research, finding those opportunities that I know, because all the people I work with in Ukraine, they do everything. They make anything happen. So it's about figuring out those opportunities and finding those places where they can get their projects heard. And really what they're saying, I mean, one of the big takeaways from this conversation is, look, the big streamers, Netflix and Disney and all of the big ones, Amazon, they're taking a lot of stuff off the table, and these regional broadcasters need to get content themselves. So there's a real competition for content. So it's and they want to hear it. So they are eager to find content, particularly content that Netflix and the others aren't aware of, right? I mean, this is how they're going to get a leg up. So there is this opportunity in the sense, because it's going on in the marketplace at large. So it's definitely something to be aware of and know that people want to hear it, but you want to present yourself in the best possible light. It's best through these pitching. All of these markets have pitching contests. Those are the best ways, because you're being sort of invited and you're being selected. So just like what we do with Pitch UA, this is all part of that process. You if you can get in, you get your project selected, that's the best way to get them going, because it means that already people have liked it, right? And that's always the name of the game, is you want to get a project that people have already endorsed, have already started to support, right? And that's kind of how this sort of system works. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, and I would just add to continue to think outside the box, and again, we're fully aware that it's getting harder and harder to fund content locally. So the important things is, remember, and these guys said it as well, it really just boils down to story, right? Like, doesn't really matter if there's a foreign actor or if the product is in a foreign language. If the story is great and they think there could be an opportunity for their audience, they're going to get interested in it. So remember that Ukraine isn't the only stop, right? There are opportunities to look outside the box, explore your story, and hopefully find partners who can help you get the money needed or the funding needed to put together your project.
And they made a point too that we didn't stress as clearly, and I want to just do that right now. The funding coming from the soft money, the government funding, the cultural funds, that's only one source. So NRK is funding a project right now, the one that the Film UA that Anna we talked about on Monday, which is not dependent on any cultural test, right? They're just going to give the money for it. It's not as much, but it's something, and then they can start to put that together with other funds. So there are these funds that are available, particularly now because there is so much interest in Ukraine, that are just wanting Ukrainians to tell their story. So there are those funds that don't require that. The other ones will require you to find a local producer and partner. So that's really the distinction. And I think it's, again, all of these things start to become more clear the more you're engaged and the more you're aware of these different markets and what they're talking about. But it is an important distinction to make. And obviously it becomes more of a burden when you're asking for more money and using the sort of the cultural funding.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is one of the beauties of living in this sort of post-COVID era is that just because a partner might be 600 kilometers away, 1,000 kilometers away, doesn't mean that you can't partner up with them. Like, nowadays, you can do everything over video chat. You can do things through phone. You don't feel like you have to be like, all right, how am I going to get to Norway, right?
Right.
If they're interested in a project, set it up through a video chat, right? And then you can present your presentation through video share. So there's a lot of resources now that don't require you to have to figure out ways of traveling and mitigating any expenses.
Yes, and certainly they'll say the same thing. That's why they have these big markets where everyone can come at once, and you can have series of meetings all in one day or in a couple of days. So that's the key part of that. And like I said, what we're thinking about with Pitch UA is looking at finding opportunities so that our participants can make those contacts. So that's definitely part of our conversation. So there'll be more here. So stay in touch, keep following up, and stay tuned for all the any other sort of talks and information workshops coming from the education platform, because more is coming.
Do you think we could share with our viewers the contact emails for our Norwegian guests? I mean, if they actually want to send them something?
Let's just check with them. Yeah, I think we should check with them first. I don't think they want to deluge of that. I mean, I think that's kind of my point about why the markets are the most important way, because they have so much time. They can't read and look at every project that comes across their door. They're looking at these markets and these pitch contests as a way to start to identify projects that are already being acknowledged, right? So that is more the process. It's hard for us to ask for them to start looking at 100 projects that are coming through their door. So I think it's better for us to be, as an organization, as Pitch UA, we have our winners, right? That would make sense for them to sort of start to talk to. But I think it's asking a lot to sort of get that. But we'll follow up with them. I think they're definitely interested. And look, it's hard for them because they don't know. I mean, they're going to say, yeah, if you've got a project, sure, but they've got to do their job. They've got a lot of things, coming their way. So I think it's really important to be respectful of their time and what they can handle.
What we got to do, we will leave our contact email in the comments on YouTube and here on Zoom. So if anyone has anything very special that they would like to share with our Norwegian guests, they could send it to us and then we will forward on.
Yeah, and Alex, I'd also, since you just bring that up too, if anyone watching, if there's any specific type of educational talks or platforms or other areas that you guys would like to learn more about or interested in, like please chime in and weigh in. We've obviously run a full gambit of different educational platform talks over the last 2 years that have covered anywhere from storytelling to where we are now with acquisitions and co-productions. But it's always good to hear from you guys exactly what you might want to hear about, and then we'll do our best to try and make those happen.
Yeah, and that actually brings me to my next point. We have a feedback form on our YouTube channel. Будь ласка, ті, хто дивляться нас на YouTube, ті,
Please, those who watch us on YouTube and through the Zoom, please visit our YouTube channel Pitch UA, and there in the description of this stream there will be a link to the feedback form in Google. We ask you to fill out with your impressions and your expectations, your suggestions for our future meetings on this educational platform Pitch UA. And I think on this note, we can conclude this conversation. I would like to thank Adam and Josh again for putting this together again, as they usually do in the previous two meetings where they're making. I would like to thank the team that technically supported this stream, the interpreters, and this platform, educational platform, Pitch UA, is one of the TCA activities. This is supported by USAID, and this event is taking place with the support of the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy of Ukraine. Thank you very much. Join our subsequent next meetings and follow our announcements for the educational events and for the grant calls coming from Pitch UA. Thank you very much. Thank you.